Hello, and welcome to the First Time Founders podcast, the show where we talk about how to start a business from nothing and grow it into something meaningful. Today, we're talking to John Mason. John Mason's a well known UK hospitality entrepreneur specializing in learning technologies. John was the founder of a platform called Vidlios, which was a mobile video first learning platform that really disrupted the UK hospitality sector in learning 10 or so years ago. John grew the business to work with some of the leading UK hospitality operators, took that business through COVID, which was extremely difficult, as we all know. And then most recently started a new business called Sideways, which is also a mobile first video platform specializing in learning for UK hospitality. What's really interesting about this conversation is John talks about what he learned from the Vidlios experience and what he's doing differently with Sideways based on his first time founder experiences. I think you're going to find the conversation really useful. I certainly did. So without further ado, my conversation with John Mason. Big John Mason, welcome to the First Time Founders podcast. Thanks for doing this.
Mate, it's a pleasure. You know me. I'm big fan of yours, big fan of what you've done, and I'm now a big fan of what you're trying to do. So I'm all yours, buddy.
I appreciate it very, very much. So before we go full bromance, should we bring the listeners and watchers up to speed on our relationship, how we got to know each other? But I suppose the preamble to that is how you got started in being a founder and making your way into hospitality.
Yeah, I have to go back in the memory banks quite a while because I've been a kind of entrepreneur or whatever that word is for a long, long time. I didn't do well at school, so I had to. I went out and learned from others, and I asked loads of questions, and that's how I learned. And I bugged the crap out of people until I found the answers that would enable me to become better at what I was trying to do. And that was a long, long process. But then at the age of 27, I founded some software before software was even a thing, and it was mildly successful. And a lot of the things I've done have been mildly successful, right? I've earned a living, and then others have been a bit better, and I've always, a lot of the times, and this is probably how a lot of your listeners would feel too, have been ahead of the curve, right? So you've kind of got this thing, and you go, "Hey, check this out," and it's amazing, and the world's just not ready for whatever that is, right? Maybe the bandwidth isn't good enough, or when we're doing video, for example, it wasn't quite fast enough, and you know, and and then you keep going because you're just so damn committed to it, and and you find that you run out of steam eventually, right? Or the world catches up again, and then someone leapfrogs you, and it's all over. So
What was the first business, the video business, John?
no, no. My first ever business was some golf software that I founded, which was a stats tracking piece of kit that was on a CD-ROM, and I sold it into what you would call, WH Smiths, but in New Zealand it was called Whitcoulls, which was the equivalent of, right? So it was a CD-ROM that sat on a shelf next to books, next to golf books. And they bought quite a few of them. So I made a little bit of money out of that. And then golfers were using it in golf associations, et cetera, et cetera. But it was on a CD-ROM. So, back when you had to plug it in to your bloody machine, right? So way ahead of its time. And if you look now there's apps that will record your swing, that'll real time, talk to a coach and all this sort of stuff, which I use some of that technology now. And people laugh at me, my mates, my golf mates, where they go, you built this thing so many years ago, right? It worked on a Nokia phone, for God's sake, so
Really?
yeah, so Java and all that sort of thing, good stuff. And then I got into apps with another business partner, and we built some of the first global hospitality ordering apps. So we built Subway's ordering app in many parts of the world except America. We built Pizza Hut's web and mobile ordering app. We built there's a handful of others, including Nando's, right? And then I decided that I wanted to do something different. I wanted to do something for myself, and that's when Vidlios came about, which are a lot of people that may recognize me, some of our friends and colleagues in the industry will recognize me for that, because that was kind of a 10-year journey as well. And now we've moved on from videos, and we've got a new platform called Sideways, which, so videos was a visual learning platform, and Sideways is a more of a bottom-up learning activation platform, and it's centered around anyone can share knowledge and upload it all into one place, and we can all get access to it from there, and then we can surface it into more structured learning and courses and things like that from there. So that's where I am currently.
Well, it was through videos that we met each other, wasn't it? I remember I was out trying to build Yapster, our SaaS platform at the time, and I kept running into customers that saying, "You've got to meet John Mason, such a great guy." And then I can't remember, we had a beer at some partner event, I think, and you accused me of ditching you with the most boring people at the party, if I remember. But there was that banter that I feel like formed our
Well,
friendship.
everyone wants to speak to you, but me, not so much, right? So you are a little social butterfly flitting around, talking to all the people I only wish I could talk to. And then, where the hell did Rob go? And why am I stuck with this person? Sort of thing, right? I remember that. I do remember that. So,
They were really really good times, and it's amazing when you're part of a cohort of founders and you're all nobody's in the minds of the customers that you're targeting, right? You might be a somebody in your previous thing, but it's new. Nobody knows you. Nobody knows your thing, and the only kindred spirits really are the other guys and
people
gals
doing
out
it
there in
at the
exactly
golf
the same
course.
boat. It's like the losers at high school, right? Trying to get into the popular groups.
Well, I did enjoy our sessions where we'd have a bitch and moan about stuff. I have to admit that. So, some of them
Well, let's do.
moaning was about the same people or companies. So,
Well, like we'll maybe we'll shield some names of companies and people to protect the innocent. But why don't we go on the record and talk a bit about some of those experiences, because it was amazing. So let's unpack Vidlios a bit more. Then, can you remember who your first handful of customers were, and why they bought in, what it was about the proposition
I
that resonated?
vividly, yeah, I vividly remember it. We were really fortunate that I knew Richard Tallboy at Wagamama, and we actually built Wagamama's first ordering app too, and that was when I was at a company called Altane, and so I reached out to him to say, "Look, I'm doing my own thing. This is what I'm doing. It's all centered around learning and sharing knowledge and creating videos in this kind of new medium for learning, where video meets learning, hence the name Vidlios, right? So it's part video, part learning." And we he said, "That sounds really interesting," and he handed me over to Sarah Macklot, who was the head of L&D there, and I met Stephen Mangleshot at the same time, who still is their executive head chef, who's a tremendous guy, so full of character, and they immediately got it. They knew that video would probably help them out, and so when we built Vidlios, um, we had to build a production arm, because we quickly worked out, well, if we don't do the videos for people, we're dead in the water, right? Because they don't have the capabilities to do it themselves. So
And
I,
sorry, John, just stop you there. Does that mean that they weren't uploading any video, or they were uploading video that was so poor that nobody
yeah,
was going to consume it?
well, let's take Wagamama out of that equation, but no one was doing video, right?
Right.
And if they were, it was external, right? It was marketing, it was, big shiny production values, all that sort of thing, which is not what you need internally, right? Internally, you need shorter, more crafted content that connects to the learning audience. Who's the audience that we're going after? What do they need to know? Front of house, back of house, service, systems, menu, whatever that is, right? Stephen immediately got it, and we've continued to be really good friends. Post it, and we still do some work with Wagamama. Even now, it's smaller because they have some in-house capabilities now, but they ran with it. So we did every single menu item, every steps of service, all their Kaizen stuff. We probably did hundreds, well, not probably, we did hundreds and hundreds of videos for them, which they put into
And they were
videos.
really well known for storytelling, weren't they?
Yeah, we were the pioneers with them on that, right? So we got them across the line with it, and someone that is as a greater storyteller and really, you know, outward and outgoing as Stephen, picked it up and ran with it, right? And then he got his team to get involved. So the chefs under him got involved, Carl and Surendra and a few others, and they turned it into a thing. And we caught up about a year ago and had a nice steak meal together. And he was really humble and said, "Hey, John, thanks for helping us." Now he's gone on to do cooking shows and he's been on Ramsay's shows and he's done all sorts of things because he is that good. He could have his own show. But anyway, going back to the videos, video and a platform, there was no platform that could house them, right? Learning management systems are so clunky and so poorly designed. Even to this day, they can't house video. They can't house it. They can't surface it where it's required. So, we're winning the war on that visual front, and we continue to win the war on it. But yeah, Wagamama were the first, God bless them, and they paved the way. As soon as we had Wagamama, then obviously others wanted to listen, and we managed to get other big brands off the back of that.
Because you got up to about 50 or so customers, didn't you, going into COVID?
Yeah, we had some really nice big brands when we were going strong. So,
and did you find that they all wanted to be Wagamama? And what's a delicate way of asking this? Fuck it, I don't need to be delicate, right? Like, what percentage of customers had the charisma and the quality of proposition to have any chance of telling a story as good as Wagamama? Don't name names. What percentage?
That's a really good and unfair question, right? Because we wouldn't call people out, but they're the leaders and thought leaders of what they do with their people, with their menu design, everything, and so they are probably still. I'm a little bit out of it with them in terms of being in the day-to-day stuff, but they still the thought leaders in a lot of things. I mean, they were what was that tracking system? Was it a Peach or something? They outperformed the market for like hundreds of weeks on the bounce, right? And that's because they do things well. But the others couldn't match them in terms of quality, if I'm honest. But they did their versions of whatever that was, right? And some got better. And now we're seeing smaller upstart brands that aren't so small anymore. But, if you look at Pizza Pilgrims as one of our foundation clients, with smaller clients when we had videos, and now bigger clients with Sideways, is that they've just picked it up and run with it. When we started doing videos, mate, they were 3-4 minutes long. Now Pilgrim's videos are 30 seconds long.
And contain everything that they need to say, right?
What we have to do, mate, 100%, what we have to do now is we've got to meet learners and young people where they are in the middle, right? They doom scroll through everything. If we don't capture their imagination or intention, engage with them and serve learning up to better suit their needs, they're not going to learn. They're just saying, no thanks, right? So,
it's interesting. You said at the beginning, you've frequently been a bit too early in markets. With your golf CD when I was learning on Encarta. You remember Encarta, the CD-ROM encyclopedia? Because you're a bit older than me. So, but it's interesting, right?
So,
but it's interesting. You to be a great. You can be a great entrepreneur that also gets an outcome, and some of it is timing, right? If you're too late, then you've got no chance. But also, if you're too early, you potentially have got years of struggle ahead. And the reason I was asking that slightly awkward question about how many of the customers were ready to be great through Vidlios is because I imagined that 10, 15 years on, you've got a new generation of leaders, particularly in hospitality where the talent turns over quite quickly, where they probably are ready. And it's great that you then immediately just went on unprompted to Pizza Pilgrims because am I right in guessing that there are more customers now with the right DNA and the right people to be great storytellers so that you actually can be successful by making them even more successful?
Yeah, there are. Short answer is yes. But we're still trying to figure out who some of those are. So, I have a mantra now, which is all around that we can help businesses help themselves, but we can't help the ones that can't. So if you're
good for you, mate.
if you're not good for if you don't have great products and services and give a shit about it, and or your people, secondly, right? So it starts with your products and services. Then you got to be super kind to your people to keep them and be better with them and pay them well and all those things. And then the last thing has to be around, what are we doing for the planet? What are we doing that's, making things better, all around? Because you've just had a kid. I've got a 14-year-old daughter. I want to leave a place in a bit better, certainly do my part in that, right? So, and I don't want to bang on about that, but that is a thing that I'm aware of, and some people agree or don't agree, but certainly with food and service and systems and all those sorts of things, we have to be doing the right things, right? We have to be doing things better and differently. So,
Well, even if our generation and people, older than us don't get it, the reality is their customers and their employees do care. So I agree. And I think, I mean, we both did different sides of communications, right? And I came to the same resolution, eventually, the same realization eventually, that a communication tool couldn't fix structural dysfunction in an organization. We ended up saying that we're the microphone, you're the band. If you guys can't play in time and in tune, then like we're just going to make you louder and out of time and out of tune. But it took years of struggle for me to summon the courage to say that to customers. Was it the same for you? Like, can you remember the moment where you started saying, "This is what we are. This is what we believe. This is what successful customers look like"?
I
Are
think
you
at
this or are you not?
Vidleos, we kind of never got there because people came to us.
Because you needed the money.
Yeah, that, but people came to us um, because they had a need, and it's a lot like what's happening with Sideways now. But we're a lot better, and as you grow up and as you get better at what you do, and I look at it as a lifetime's work, right? So I'm, in my mid-50s. I've got limited time left work wise. I've probably got 10 more good years that I'm going to focus and try to kick some ass. But I don't want to work with companies I can't help. I don't want to work with companies that can't help themselves. If we're building a long tail, and sometimes we won't be able to recognize that, and I get that, but we won't have the same interaction with those customers. Our customers that we have now that we've had for 10 years are really important to me, and I care deeply about it. And so we always go the extra mile, and it keeps you thinking and it keeps you on your toes. But the longer tail where they just come in to use it as a service, then they can plug and play and knock themselves out. But our ones that we care about, that we've had for a long time, and that we will build new business relationships as well, then we're always trying to get 1% better and try and help them to get better, sort of thing. So,
If you were advising a first time B2B SaaS founder that had their first 10, 20, 30 customers, would you be saying to them, fire the bad customers?
I would now, but I'm in a different spot, right? So they
Talk
just
about that. What do you mean?
they're going to be a headache, right? They're going to cause you grief. The ones that pay you the least want the most, quite often, right? So the ones that are um, that you took on board because you needed the money often are the biggest headaches, right? And they're in your face, and they're always, you know, it feels like they're on you the whole time. And so there's a balance between, um, you know, taking the money just for the money's sake. So you have to. I treat it now that when I'm on calls with customers, potential customers and prospects, I'm interviewing them as much as they're interviewing me, because I can't help them if there's things that I hear or they signal to things that I think, well, and then I go deeper on those things just to make sure where they're at, right? Because engagement, um, people problems, and all the rest of it. There's some of that we can take care of with better content and a better platform. But if they've got things that are fundamentally wrong in their businesses, like you said, you often can't help, because they won't execute properly anyway, right? They'll just hope that it's the magic bullet. And without the proper
Totally.
execution, we can't. do the right things, right? So
Yeah, and I think let's expand on that for first-time founders that are listening that won't entirely understand, right? The reason that they're so expensive to serve is because you actually structurally can't help them and they desperately feel like they need help. So the volume of help they think they need is so much more than the budget they allocated to your service, which would have been adequate for a customer that's a good fit, right? Like one of the things we found often in the communication space was we might be dealing with a really visionary people leader, maybe a communications manager, someone that perhaps didn't have the authority, the organizational authority to fix some of the underlying causes of disengagement in the organization. So what they would do is they'd lean much harder into the things they could control, which would be the small team of people around them and then their suppliers, of which I was one. And you'd be coming back saying, "Look, we will kill ourselves for you. But the solution is you need to get your CEO to give a shit and then communicate to the organization that he or she gives a shit." And the
mm,
comms manager would be saying, "Well, I can't do that, can I?" You're like clearly, like the CEO is the CEO. What, like, I can't do anything about that. So therefore, let's focus our time and attention on some particular button or widget or feature in the platform.
yeah, it's not
And
going fast enough, or it's not doing this or that or whatever, right? So
but it's hard because there is always a grain of truth in the thing that they're asking you to make better. So I think as a new founder, unless you're a total sociopath, the instinct is, I know my thing can be better, so I agree, let's make it better. But kind of in that, you lose the authority to say, and you need to get your house in order client side.
yeah, it's really interesting. I subscribe and listen to and read the guys that started Basecamp. I don't know if you're aware of those guys, but they're kind of I look up to them, right? Because
this
right,
this is the Basecamp book on products development cycles. Yeah, 100%. Go on, keep going, John. This is brilliant.
yeah. So their rework book and their rework podcast and all the rest of it. But they're profitable from day one, which is a tough gig, right? And they've got their own way that they do things. And you know, what inspired me about them was they got their pricing right, they got their product right, they knew who their audience was. And those are the things that are critical, right? So for me, knowing who your end customer is, what size of business they are, what their budget will be, how do you fit that, how do you service that, how do you keep it profitable for your business and doing all of those things, because they are 100% so important to your success or failure, right? So
It's so true. Can you just walk us through that for Sideways then? So who
yeah,
would be the ideal customer for
so
Sideways, and
it's
who
changing
perhaps
now.
wouldn't?
Good thing is it's changing, but what we identified and what the rework guys say is they they're going after the Fortune 5 million, right? So everyone wants the Fortune 500 because they're going to pay you $2 million to install it for all of their 2 million employees and all this sort of stuff. But that's a 12 to 18-month sales cycle that'll break most companies, right? Unless you're Salesforce or some of those other big guys. Whereas when you can go after companies so we figured out that our sweet spot was around 250, 300 people, organizations, right? We could
Makes
service
sense.
them really well. We could shift the needle for them. We could instantly make an impact. And I looked at pricing, and when we're smaller, we came out the back of COVID, and we had a product that was that did what it was supposed to do, and it was keeping up to what we said it would do. I looked at the pricing, and the pricing is so damn critical. Everyone prices everything the same. And I looked at Basecamp and I saw what they're doing. And we're more expensive than Basecamp because our product comes with content, right? So we can do all your
Right.
clients training, all the rest of it. And if you were to buy that off the shelf from somewhere else, which would be terrible, which people do, and I want to call out the people that are doing a really bad job because they've just been ripping people off, is that we priced it. So, like, to give you an example, our um, average customer was paying us £5,000 a year, right?
Right.
That's gone up. That's hitting now 7.5 because we've got these bands. But I think now with some new products and features we're building, we're going to get over the 10. So we're starting to creep up because we're offering so much more value. So you can easily see the value you're getting. But for a lot of companies, They either start way too high, and no one can afford it. If you think about these companies that were doing the gamification and that, they could only ever go after, the big guys, the guys that could pay the $100,000 for rendering of these things that you wore virtual headsets for and all that, which are crazy, right? That serves 1% of any industry. So we're going after the bottom half, and it's mainly ignored, right? So it's
Totally.
mainly just proportionate, because the bigger companies don't want that business. It's too hard. They think it costs too much to get. We hug it and do the best we can with it. And there is thousands of companies, right? So, Basecamp has 30,000 customers. Geez, I want to be more like Basecamp, right? And I want to get that $200, $500, $1,000 a month that's paid every single month from those companies that love your product and service solution support. That's kind of the model we're heading towards. But we're now building some more, future proofed features that are costing quite a bit of money to build. So that will mean we're going to be able to target the 500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people operators out there. So,
Well, I guess it's like your example with Pizza Pilgrims, right? The nature of your business is that some of those customers will grow, and you obviously need to keep evolving to be able to grow with them. And the feedback that I hear about you in the market constantly is that those cool boutique brands that are going to be the future sort of growers of tomorrow love the relationship and the service they get from you at a price point they can justify. So I can see why that strategy makes sense. And then based on your prior experience with Vidlios, you know how to not waste money on operations, right? So every penny they do spend on you, you put into productive investments that they actually value, right? Because there's nothing worse than not charging a lot, pissing all the money away, and then only being able to deliver a really crap service.
yeah, the thought has crossed my mind, but unfortunately, yeah, we can't do that. But yeah, we've invested it all back in, and like, one of the things we spoke about offline was, when we built Vidlios, I had a partner who was the dev guy, like Craig is to you with Yapster, and both boffins, both big, planet-sized brains and stuff. That did a lot of the hard yards. Well, in our case, did all of the hard yards. But we always put off this idea of, outsourcing the development. And I was always told it was too risky, it takes too long, we'd have to bring them up to speed, we have to do this, do that. So I just immediately thought, I used to think that was, okay, that's what it is, right? And then when your hand gets forced that you have to do it that way, and it's a bit scary, you bite the bullet and you do it, and you figure out that it's not scary, and then you've got 25-year-old MIT students, out of Maribor in Slovenia doing our stuff for us, who are insanely good at what they do and so deeply care about it. And I've got such an amazing relationship with them. And yeah, it's not all beer and skittles, but it's 80 to 90% worked out way greater than my expectations, right? So, again, another thing like that, where as older founders, to release everything and to go learn something new and do something new and not have control over it as such, and for it to blow out a bit here and there, and you're always trying to find extra money to pay for it. But my vision about all that is, if we're not progressing, we'll never get to the end point, right? There'll never be a payday as such, because we have to keep going, so.
It's interesting. You use the phrase "forced your hand." That was exactly my experience as well. Yapster went into the coronavirus lockdowns, which, for those that weren't in the sort of frontline economy, or weren't in the consumer services economy, all of the customers were closed, right, when the mandatory lockdowns came. So that meant many, even if they were under contract, stopped paying their bills for a while. And Yapster, like Vidlios, like John's business at the time, was solely serving that market. So we had 30 people going into the crisis, and I laid off 24, went from 30 to 6.
just to stop the potential hemorrhaging of cash. Because even as the government rolled off furlough, like furlough wasn't completely free to companies, and it got progressively less free over time. And a lot of small suppliers just bled out, right, waiting for the market to spring back, which it didn't quite do. And other than that period when Rishi did Eat Out to Help Out, where it went go go, but then it all sort of died afterwards for like a year. The thing I learned most about that was how effectively you could operate with virtually no if you had just a handful of good people. And the people that got laid off many of them were really, really good. It was nothing to do with them. It was entirely my fault.
And I've seen they've
But
gone on to great things, some of them, right?
totally. But as a founder, once you've operated with what feels like no people, you can't unsee that. Now I see flabby supplier businesses left, right, and center, and they're pissing away resources that they're expecting either their customers or their investors to fund for no real value, because a lot of it's wasted resource. And it's very hard to give first time founders that advice, because unless your hand is forced, it feels reckless to do it, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, you always said to me, and I struggled with it when we were catching up over beers and stuff. And people will think, God, that's all those guys did. But, we only really ever saw each other every 3 months or so, right? And it was nice for a few hours. But, this kind of, and Rework, the founders, 337 Signals, and those guys talk about it all the time. They started with 2 people and they built this thing up. And now they're still only 80, and they're worth, they never want to sell, and they're this, that, and the next thing. They're 80 people after 20 years,
Yeah, it's astonishing.
and they've built this production line, and they ship new software and updates and features and everything every 6 weeks, and that's their mantra and how they do things. And they do that in teams of 2, whereas
Yeah,
their competitors are Monday and Slack and whatnot, and all the others that have teams of developers of 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people, and they can't keep up with the good work that these guys do. And
it
that's a thing, right? I mean, that's what you just said. Flabby, silly things where investors go, well, just grow your people, grow this, grow that, so we can look like growth. Well, that doesn't mean you're going to get all the sales that come from that, right? So
it seems to me it's all about focus, right? The way that Basecamp do that is by being really particular about what they're going to focus on. And look, I'm sure they do a bit of theatrical marketing, shock marketing, like many people do to get attention. But generally, I think they're a very transparent business, and so you can apply focus when you're honest with your customers about what you are and are not. I think with a lot of those on the sort of venture capital backed trail, because they've told their investors that they are going to achieve $1 trillion outcome, they can't really talk the language of focus, because it doesn't resonate with what they've told their team and their investors, and therefore they can't really start saying to customers, we're going to be the best supplier in the world for this very narrowly defined customer type.
we're going
And
to use
therefore
all the money you gave us. We're going to keep it in the bank for a bit, right? No, go spend that money. Spend it as fast as you can. And that's what they all say too. And I'm very mindful of that. So for me, it's like spend it every pound like it's your last one, right? Hire people when your eyeballs are bleeding and you can't do the work yourself, because that is what's going to make a success, in my opinion, and not everyone's, going to make a successful business. It's not going to go as fast as everyone else's. I don't want it to. I certainly want to get to hundreds of customers. I've seen some, we're not going to mention names, but I know our competitors or rivals, and I know some others that are partners and all the rest of it have 500, 600, 1,000 customers, and they're on the decline now, right? Because they're
yeah,
not keeping up with things. So if we can if we can be the pizza pilgrims of our market of learning and development, and of knowledge capturing and sharing, and of and learning engagement, then we will get to the hundreds. But it's going to take us 5 years, right? We're going to get to 100 within 2 years. That's my goal, and then it's going to be hundreds by year 5, and whatever by year 10. And I want people to come on that journey with us. That's our partners. That's our Potential investors, we haven't raised any money yet. So, they have to be on that journey, that slow journey too, right? Because,
Totally.
we'll 10x your money, but I'm not going to be able to do it for you in 2 years. But if you give me 10 years, I can, sort of thing. And if you've made
I
enough
think
money already, then why are you concerned about it, right? So that type of thing. And we're going to do some good. The ultimate thing is I want to change learning for good, right? That takes fucking time.
Yeah, I think that's right. And my view is that the most dangerous thing is fall between the two stools. I think you can be super lean, customer cash driven, and I think that works really well. I also think you can be on a rocket ship where it's genuinely a sort of winner takes all market opportunity, where the product has to mature much faster than the customers can fund its development. Like classically a consumer business, for example, where each user's worth a very small amount of money and you need to invest huge fixed costs to build something that all of the people love. Then it makes sense again to be on that venture path. I think the danger for a lot of founders is they get lured into the venture capital industrial complex, receive a check that would be a good fit for Facebook when really they're more like a Yapster or a Vidlios. And there's no shame in that.
Yeah.
And then they lean into a model that the economics in their market can't afford and their customers don't really want. They don't end up being the next Facebook, and there isn't really anywhere to go. So what I preach to founders is take some time to know what you are, be led by what your customers need and want, and what your personal time horizons and ambitions are. And then if that means raise $1 billion, go raise $1 billion. But don't go raise a few million that's going to put you on a path to raising $1 billion if you're never going to get there, because those VC folks will happily pull their checks and kill your business if your metrics don't keep up. And then in pursuit of those metrics, you'll do crazy, crazy things.
Totally. And as you say, people speak in riddles, and there's all the, the non-truths that happen around metrics and data and all that sort of thing. And
what do you mean by that, John?
What's that?
What do you mean by that? Come on, you're a direct bloke. You don't have to name anyone, but what is some bullshit that people spout?
Well, we all, I've been in sales. Everyone should be a salesman, right? But I've been in sales for such a long time, and your prospect list always sounds a lot greater than what it actually is. Right?
That's hope, right? Hope is not a strategy.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't count a sale until it's a sale, right? I never ever have done. But the people that talk about, oh, we've got this client, we're getting this client, and this client loves us and that, and then you hear that they don't, right? Or whatever, and then if you look at the other end of the spectrum, so our competitors have all been bought, and so now their service levels have dropped to just really average, right? To less than average. And that's I can't believe that the company that bought them hasn't figured that out. It hasn't gone, why would we do that? Why would we hemorrhage? Why have we bought this only to hemorrhage clients because we're not supporting those clients, right? Or customers. And long may it continue, because we're going to eat their lunch. But there seems to be no obvious change, or anything like that. People are just annoyed with that, right? And they're not doing what they said they would do, and the buck doesn't stop anywhere. It's just lost with, one of them said to me the other day that they waited 4 weeks to get an answer for something.
I've got two insights on that, John. So this book, The Qualified Sales Leader by John McMahon, every founder that's crap at forecasting should read this. It's really good for forcing you to be... It's so good, but it forces you to take a methodical approach to asking yourself whether you've met the right people in a customer, demonstrated value, such that you can actually kind of predict the deal. And for customer side people listening, this is not because we're mad money driven folks, it's because without your money, we can't hire people to deliver the service that we promised you. So knowing when you're going to sign and pay is kind of fundamental to not letting you down. That's why forecasting is so important for a founder. So I would really read that book. And then the interesting thing, John, on falling support levels, I totally agree. And I've seen the same thing. My experience at Yapster when we had to downsize drastically to survive COVID was I think our service levels went up because we went from having a team of very young account managers, because that's all we could afford, to having quite a big self-serve library and a centrally managed kind of support desk that and sometimes people get annoyed because you're sending them a link rather than offering to jump on a call in the first instance, and they're dealing with, we call it the guide dog team, and they're like, I just want to know if I'm speaking to Sarah or Rob. But of course, if Sarah leaves, then they get pissed off because they're like, oh, I like Sarah, and now I've got to get to know Adam. But what we always said to them was, CC me on every ticket. And if at any point you feel like our organization doesn't care or has dropped the ball, you can pull the stop cord. And I promise you I'll intervene and I'll find out what's going on. And it was something like 1% of occasions. Like, so rarely did I actually need to stop the train, that the service levels went up on a cost-effective basis. All the customers wanted to hear was that somebody gave a shit and they could stop the train. But like when you look at the kind of stop this train on the tube, right? Like only the very naughtiest kid presses the red button because you know it's disruptive. So most customers are like, they actually chilled once they knew that somebody cared and they had like a pressure valve. What was your experience on that?
Yeah, I refer to that as there's a backstop, right? So you're the backstop and you do it. I deal with a lot of our service related things, and I've got a small team with Karen at Purple Story and her team, which shares some wonderful guys like Sarah and Amy working there who are picking up a lot of the day-to-day things for us and challenges and servicing our clients, and they do an amazing job. And but I'm always the last guy. I'm always checking the emails out to see is this progressing, and then I used to forward everything onto our developers, and then I realized that no, let's just wait, because a lot of times it can be human error, right? And so now what I do is I just say, can you just go and check these things out for me, please? And those things often fix it, right? And I used, before I bug the developers, which is eventually going to cost me money, to find out that the person at the other end wasn't doing it how they should do it, or, it wasn't necessarily their fault either, but maybe it was our fault that we didn't tell them more. But there was a fault somewhere, and we never ever say, look, it's your fault, not our fault. Of course, no, you would never do that. But a lot of the time, it is something that can be sorted out reasonably quickly. And then, as you say, if it needs me to intervene and then talk to the developers, my developers will sort it out within a day. If it's something that should be working and it's not working, it gets done, right? But those things they have to be that. It can't just be some minor thing somewhere that, is a bit of human error as well. So,
do you know what, John? The thing that keeps coming up is sort of clarity and courage, right? Like, it's a bit like having the clarity on who your customer is and the courage to only sell to them. It's the same on customer service, isn't it? It's the clarity to know what the product does and should do, and then the courage to take responsibility if the service isn't clear and that you didn't teach the customer well enough, but the courage to say, like, if we pull the stop cord every time you're confused, the product's not going to move forward because I'm going to be distracting my entire organization. Please let me help you to give you a great service within the constraints of the very affordable price I charge you. And customers, like, they're so grown up about that, particularly in the world that you work in and that I've worked in previously in hospitality. These are operators. Shit goes wrong all the time, every day in their core business. Like, they just hate it when you bullshit them and don't take responsibility.
Yeah, it's like the waiter going out and saying, I'm sorry, the chef's really just, he's having this has happened or that's happened. You don't want to hear that. You just want to hear it's going to be 10 more minutes, right? And my apologies, and here's some beer nuts. That fixes everything, right? Or, we've taken a couple of drinks off your bill, whatever that is. You're like, great, I'm enjoying myself anyway. Happy days, right? Because you owned it And you got to, those sort of situations, you have to own everything. And sometimes they cause a big knot in the stomach. But like, as we know, if you let it fester, it just gets worse, right? So, you own it as quickly as you can and get ahead of it, because it's only going to get worse, right? So.
That was my experience as well. I don't like conflict, but my desire to avoid conflict now causes me to seek it out earlier, because I know that there's going to be less conflict the earlier I face it.
Yeah, and like you said, if you're honest, most people go, okay, that's cool, right? Like
100%.
80, at least 80%. And the 20 that don't, 10% of them are dicks, and you don't want to work with them anyway, right? So,
well, it does. It's funny when you take that approach. It does reveal bullying personalities, because there are some people that when you sort of show them your soft underbelly, they'll want to stamp on it. It's just their human urge. And you're right. I would say those are the sorts of folks that if you've got the luxury of picking and choosing who you work with, you might want to politely remove them from your customer roster.
yeah, and even on price, I get 20% of people challenge me on price, even though we're 50% cheaper than our rivals. And so I have that chat with them. And then someone might have a really good reason, that this has happened to their business or that hasn't. So I take that into consideration. But I definitely say a hard no to most of it, right? Because I just go, no, you're getting a lot of value. You're getting us, you're getting my life's work, my blood, sweat, and tears, and I'm selling it to you cheaper than I should be. So that's it. And then just shut up, right? Because then they go, okay, cool, that's great, And I'm not saying
because they just want to know that, don't they? And the reality is, that you're giving them your everything, and they are getting value. And once you come to a negotiation with that confidence, the buyer actually then can feel good about their purchase order, because they know they've got the very best value you can give them.
And some do it just because, if you ever have to get into those procurement wrangles, some do it because that's the nature of the beast. But what I've found, even when you're having that chat with them, if you stick to your beliefs and that, they will say okay in the end. But
Totally.
they will then have to tell someone else why they didn't get some sort of discount, right? And they're going to have a decent enough story to back that up for them, right? So, I just stick to it, and I don't do it in a horrible way. I just do it in a matter of fact way, and because you're just giving margin away if you do, and it's crazy to just discount to get a customer. I just don't do that.
Particularly if you're going to end up letting them down later by virtue of not being able to support them, or because you actually resent their business. John, this has been amazing. Are you happy for people to reach out to you? I'll put your LinkedIn and email in the show notes. Whether they're customer side or other founders, I know you're generous with your time and always looking to partner as well. So open invites to reach out.
Yeah, 100%, mate. As long as they're people like you. So
I'm not sure there's that many people as mad as we are, John, but they can do their best.
True.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, mate.
Oh, you're welcome. Good chatting.